Time for business. Kate joins us. More job losses are looming as a major cinema chain, brings down the curtain.
Yeah, Mark, more than 650 movie theatres are being temporarily shut in the US and UK. 45,000 people risk losing their jobs at Cineworld. Meanwhile, Odeon has said it's cutting back hours at many of its 120 cinemas in the UK and Ireland, opening only on weekends. Claire Rush reports.
The curtain is coming down on Cineworld, the world's second biggest cinema chain. Amid a series of delays for major Hollywood blockbusters, including most recently the latest James Bond film, Cineworld says it had no choice.
From liquidity point of view, we were bleeding much bigger amounts when we are open than when we are closed, because we'll be like a grocery shop with no food.
The move means Cineworld will shutter its 536 Regal theaters in the U.S. and its 127 Cineworld and Picture House venues in the UK starting Thursday. Some 45,000 employees are affected. The chain hopes to reopen its venues in a couple months' time, but that possibility is far from certain. Its closures add yet another blow to the entertainment industry, one of the hardest hit by the coronavirus pandemic. With social distancing restrictions, movie theaters are struggling to attract customers, a trend further exacerbated by Hollywood studios' pivot to online streaming. Earlier this year, at the height of international lockdowns, DreamWorks released Trolls World Tour in theaters and for digital rental on the same day. More recently, Disney decided against releasing its Mulan remake in U.S. theaters, opting instead to put it directly on its own streaming service, Disney+. With few blockbusters set for release for the rest of the year, many movie theaters now face an uphill battle to fill their seats.
Let's check in on the day's trading action now. Wall Street jumped to session highs after the U.S. President Donald Trump tweeted that he would be leaving hospital later on. Stocks had already been rising on signs of progress towards another U.S. stimulus package. The Dow Jones ended up about 460 points. The Nasdaq up over 2%. The major European indices closed higher. We saw gains of about 1% each for the Paris CAC 40 and the Frankfurt DAX. New data showed that retail spending in the Eurozone had jumped a stronger than expected 4.4% in August. Moving on to some of the day's other business headlines now. French energy giant Engie has agreed to sell its nearly 30% stake in the utility group Suez. Veolia had offered 3.4 billion euros for the shares as it tries to cement its position in the water and waste management sector. Suez employees have protested against the sale, with management describing the bid as hostile. The French government, which holds just under a quarter of Engie's shares, has confirmed that it voted against the deal at Monday's board meeting. ExxonMobil will slash 1,600 jobs in Europe, about 11% of its regional workforce. The U.S. oil and gas giant said the decision was linked to the drop in demand for fuel during the pandemic. Shell and BP have announced deeper job cuts, about 9,000 and 10,000 jobs respectively, as global travel and shipping remain slow. And if the UK and EU don't reach a Brexit trade deal, two car makers may ask the British government to reimburse them for any new tariffs. Japan's Nikkei Daily reported that Toyota and Nissan were planning to seek payments to cover the additional 10% tax that the EU would impose on cars imported from the UK. Well, talks on a Brexit deal are due to continue this week after the UK and EU leaders expressed hope that they could reach common ground. This weekend, Boris Johnson and Ursula von der Leyen approved a one-month extension to negotiations, pushing back their initial October 15th deadline. Key sticking points remain over fishing rights and rules on government aid to companies. After a meeting with the EU's chief Brexit negotiator, Germany's foreign minister said the coronavirus pandemic had made those discussions more difficult and more urgent.
Die Menschen auf beiden Seiten des Kanals haben aktuell genug damit zu tun, die gesundheitlichen und wirtschaftlichen Herausforderungen zu schultern. Und deshalb wäre es völlig unverantwortlich, ihnen in dieser Lage noch zusätzliche Probleme durch einen No-Deal aufzubürden.
London's Royal Opera House is preparing to sell a painting in order to ensure its financial future. The portrait of a former opera director by David Hockney could raise up to $23 million when it's auctioned off at Christie's later this month. Like many other cultural institutions around the world, the Opera House says its income has dropped by about half since the start of the pandemic, despite reopening for performances on streaming platforms. Mark, this is sort of like digging into the attic to sell off a family heirloom, really. And it's far from alone. Here in Paris, the Rodin Museum has been selling off some bronzes. And in the US, the Association of Art Directors has loosened its rules to allow museums to sell off paintings in order to remain afloat.
What would France Van Cat do, eh?
Dig into our attics?
The only treasure we've got is you. And we couldn't sell you, could we?
Not for sale.
Because who do the business? There we go. Kate, thank you very much indeed. Kate with the business. Great to see you.